Hi and welcome back. Here we have our Firefly FFMN. In this series of videos, we're going to take the guitar from its stock form, replace a couple things, and take this guitar to the professional level, something that you can take out and gig and it be a very dependable guitar. So the first thing we want to do is to disassemble the guitar. Let's get the guitar prepped and ready to start adding our new components that we've selected onto the guitar. The guitar still has its factory strings, so we are going to restring it again, intonate it again, because we're going to be removing the bridge to do some modifications to the bridge, adding some tuners and some other things. So I'm going to go ahead and go into squirrel mode. We're going to loosen the tension on the strings, take the strings off of it, and start taking this guitar apart in preparation for modifying it. And something else I like to do, I like to have little containers to put my parts in. Okay. This little container right here, we have our screws for our back covers. So in this one, I'm just going to put my lockers. That way we don't lose anything. Before we loosen that, I'm using a Calvin 3mm tool here. I like this tool because on most guitars, this is long enough to get into the back of the bridge and keep the tool straight into the locker so you're not coming in on an angle. And it works on this guitar as well. Okay, we just removed the strings off the guitar. We want to take the bridge off. And since we're completely removing the bridge, we want to pull down on the bar. We want to go through and make sure that these don't have to be tight. We need to get them back to the point where they're snug. And the only reason we're doing that is when we take the springs and everything off the guitar and we turn the guitar upside down, sometimes these little blocks can fall out. Now there's still pressure on it, so we're good. We can flip the guitar over. Now we're going to take these two screws, the screw and the screw. We're going to release the tension and pull the springs. Doesn't take much. Try to keep it semi-square as you're doing it so the pressure's even. And remember, we don't want to damage the knife edge, so I'm going to keep this hand on the bridge. I still have my hand on the bridge. I'm going to flip the guitar over. Now we are going to completely remove the bridge. Pull it back, make sure it clears the posts. And then here is a good look at the bridge. Now this was my first time turning these. I don't want to lose this little piece here. So first let's remove these guys. We'll inspect. Let's inspect the bridge as it is from the factory. Let's loosen these up. And there's our bridge with the pieces removed. Let's look at our actual piece here. I'll try to hold this. I can see it in the camera. And it looks like they have a slight chamfering around the bottom. There's a spot for the screw to tie into to lock it to capture the piece. So it doesn't look horrible. Let's check another one, make sure it's consistent. It also has a capturing pin. I don't know if you can see that. So we're going to take these. Again, keep track of your parts. Now this is what I wanted to point out. This is the first time I had turned these. Can you see that? This should stay perfectly straight. You can see there that there is definitely an issue. And then looking at all of them, that one does it a little bit. That one is good. That one looks like it's okay. That one has a little bit. And that one is doing it quite a bit. Hold down your saddle back here. And then here's our bottom block that we're replacing. So looking at this, we may want to get some upgraded screws here. I'm kind of thinking that would be a good modification after seeing how these respond. We may look at a kit where it's upgrading these screws, upgrading these, and new tuners. I don't know what a complete kit would be to replace the saddles and everything. We're trying to do this on a budget, so we'll probably keep the saddles and just replace these. And there's a full view of the stock bridge. And look at that. I believe I see an FR on that bridge. It is not stamped up here. And I have looked for any other markings that may say Floyd Rose on it, and I haven't seen them. Now, we did add shims under here, and I lifted these up, but I didn't really pay attention to the bottom. So we're going to disassemble this bridge a little further and see if we find anything else. So the first thing we need to do is to loosen these guys. So let's loosen them up. Let's flip the bridge over, get our little locking nuts out, make sure they're all out. We're going to put those in a container so we don't lose them. Now, let's start taking out the saddles. I want to say that's a 2.5 millimeter. And that's what it is. Let's move our first saddle. This would be our high E saddle. Put that back in there. And this one is marked with a 1. And from what I've seen with Floyd Rose, these numbers really don't correspond. 1 doesn't mean that it's the smallest or the biggest or anything else. So we're going to put that over here, and I'm going to keep these oriented to where I have an idea of where the shims go. Anytime you make a change, it's never going to go back, you know, exactly the same. We may end up modifying some of these. We have it apart, so let's continue disassembling here. I have to use the tool on that one. And this one has shims under it. Looks like we have 2, 3 shims. Wow. To get that right. When I see that, it makes me wonder that at the factory, did they put the right saddles in the right spots? This one is marked right here with a number 2. Let's put this piece in it. And I'm going to lay it over there with the shims in front of it and the saddle in the next spot. Go to the next one. This we used 3 shims as well. Put the shims over in front of that saddle. Let's see what this one's marked. This one is marked with a 3. And we'll gauge these. Let's see if there's a difference. Oh, we got to put the piece back in it. Set it over there. Go to our next saddle. Push it forward, grab the shims. 2 shims. I couldn't remember. This saddle also has a 3 written on it right there. So I'm going to put that over there. So let's go to our next saddle. We're going to take this side out first on this one. One shim. And this saddle is marked with a 2. And our last saddle, our low E saddle. And I don't believe we put a shim in the low E saddle. We'll soon find out, won't we? Nope, no shim in the low E saddle. There's our low E, and that one is marked with a 1. Okay, let's take this apart now. There's a 3mm. And we're gonna, this was edited out in one of the 4 mod videos. We're gonna take some alcohol, clean this out, and when we put this back together, we're gonna put some blue Loctite on that so that stays secure. The tremolo turns and tightens off of this. This just holds this base plate, this base housing for the arm, tight to the base plate. I'm going to keep that. And these screws here, again, we have screws. Notice that I can put these in with these because these other ones are for the locking nuts at the top. They are a different size. If you get the exact same thread pitch and diameter, I would put them in different cups, maybe label the cups with some tape. But I've done so many of these, it's kind of redundant for me at this point. We're going to remove the fine tuners. And it looks like right here they have taken something and hit the threads. And some companies will do that so you can't back the tuner all the way out. That one's catching as well. That might be something that we have to clean up. They are disengaging. Like I said, some companies do it so you can't back the screw all the way out. So let's just back them out for right now. We're just disassembling. Okay. Here's our number 2. Let's check how that one fits. It's pretty decent. Here's my number 1 JIS. That's loose. Let's try our number 2 JIS. This is our standard American one. The JIS fits better, number 2 JIS. So we're going to stick with the JIS. And then keep track of how they've oriented the parts. They have, this feels like it is metal. It's a little shim. And here's our Floyd Rose part. It says 34 millimeter, and it is marked Floyd Rose. Here's our retainer. Keeps the pressure on the back for the fine tuners. Okay, we have our base plate, and I've grabbed my tool. My tool is a drill bit. You don't want to pick a drill bit that is perfect to this radius. You want just a little bit of playroom. And that playroom is dependent on the sandpaper that you apply to the drill bit. So I'm going to take a piece of my scrap. I never throw away sandpaper. I'm going to take a piece of my scrap, worn out. I think this is, I think it's 1200, but it's been used. So we're going to tear a piece off here, a little smaller. And I am going to apply that to the drill bit. Just like that. You don't want any spots where it, pinched out. Get it good and flat. We want to check that after we apply the sandpaper to the drill bit. Okay? That's pretty good. And all we want to do is just lightly clean up that knife edge. And you can feel it. You can feel the little burrs. And believe it or not, there is a chamfer on this side too. This is the most important side on this one, the way this one's machined. So we're going to come in, do the exact same thing. And this is 1200 grit, so it's doing very, very little, but it is cleaning it. And that's the important thing, taking those burrs, deburring that machining. Because that's what actually causes the problems, is those little burrs. We'll go right around it like that. Do the same thing here. Now we're going to go around the knife edge. I'm going to do just a little bit of a pitch on that one. I'm going to look at them. And you can see, I don't know if you'll be able to see in the camera, you can see like right there it took a little bit of a ridge off. Just right there, just a little bit. Look at this side. Now this upper one looks good. Let's check the bottom side. Now on the bottom side right here, it's taken a little bit, and it's taken a little bit right there. And right here was the bad spot. I don't know if you can really see that or not, but I can see that it definitely sanded in a little bit right there. So that was definitely a bad spot. I'm going to go one more time. You don't want to go crazy with it. And like I said, this is 1200 grit. And that's all we need to do. And that feels much better in there. So that should be good for us. Our base plate, we've went through our knife edges. So let's go ahead and start reassembling here, if I can get my seat turned around properly. Now, anytime these things are machined, they use what's called cutting oil. And that cutting oil in here will cause your thread lock not to work properly. So, this is what I use. And it doesn't take much. We just want to clean up the threads in there and get any cutting oil from the factory off of it. This is a brand new one because my other one was pretty much gone. Take our rag here, dip it down in our, get some alcohol down in there. You can see there is cutting oil there. Work it down in the threads. Something else you can do, you can take your screw. Let's grab our screwdriver here. Take our screw. You can dip that in your alcohol. Get the screw good and wet. And then run it in with the alcohol and the screw. You can see it bubbling right there. See that? That's going to work that alcohol down into those threads. Okay, let's take our screw. Here's a clean part of our towel, and we're going to wipe it and see what we get. So, not too bad. I've seen a lot worse. So let's go to our next hole. And it is dripping wet. Wipe our screw. Again, fresh alcohol. And you can see it bubbling. When you see those bubbles, that means it's forcing that air out of that machined hole. We're going to really clean that screw now. So there's a clean one. Now these have not been cleaned. So we're going to take that screw, dip it in our alcohol, wipe it down. You can see the black. Take our next screw, dip it in our alcohol. You can see the black. That's the cutting oil. Now we want to take this and wipe it down. And I'm going to set it just like that so it drains out real quick. I'm going to grab our blue Loctite. And this is just Permatex. And this bottle is pretty much empty, but there's still some in it. Enough to do what we need to do today. Taking some blue. I'm just going to put a little bit in there. Now you can also, since I dipped the tool down in there, take it, there you go, and then work it into the threads. Doesn't take much. And clean your tools. If you abuse your tools like I do, and you use them for things that they're not intended to be used for, you should clean them. Okay, I believe we're now ready to start reassembling this bridge. I had to replace the battery in my camera. So I have lightly cleaned this after we cleaned up our knife edge. We have cleaned our new block and put a little thread lock in there. Now we're also going to put some thread lock on the screws. So let's take our first screw, put it right there. This is our spacer. Now that is the second time I've done that. Before we do that, we need to clean this guy out, which I've got some alcohol in the rag here. This has already been done once. Now I want to take my tool. I want to make sure I get some thread lock down in there. You can see the thread lock. I'm going to wipe off our tool. We're going to set that on our plate. Put our next piece on. And here's our screw. Need to clean that just to make sure. Our rag has alcohol on it. Cleaned. And we're going to take it and put it in some thread lock. You can see the thread lock. And that thread lock's going to prevent that from getting loose. Now I'm going to put a little bit of pressure on this. Blue thread lock you can get apart. Red thread lock, it's pretty much permanent. The only way to get red thread lock apart is to apply a little heat to this housing. And in this case, you'd apply the heat here because this is just a cover applying pressure to the plate. So you'd put the heat here to loosen that red, take it out. But even at that rate, red probably isn't the best choice. I use the blue. The blue, if you hit it real quick like this, it'll release. Some people still put a little heat on it, but I found that you don't with the blue. But yet it's strong enough to hold this in place. And we are going to put a fair amount of pressure on that. Make sure it stays. Now, let's take our screw, put there, take our plate, take our spacer, and make sure you orient your parts correctly. Okay? We're going to take this one, hold this. We want to again take our tool, take a little thread lock. I'll put it right on the threads of that screw. Wipe the tool off. And remember, we did put a little bit in there, but we just want to make sure. So we're going to align it, spin it. Just trying to get it to catch. You don't have to tighten it, because now you have to align all these parts up. So what I'll do is kind of hold it like that. It's very hard to do this and keep it in the camera. So sometimes you struggle with that. There's our hole. Let's use a smaller tool. Get in there and try to get that to align. There we go. Take our screw. Again, little thread locker. And trying to align all these little parts underneath. Make sure you got it. See how it spun out of the way? Take it back out. There it goes. Don't tighten it, because we still have one more screw. And again, a little blue thread locker. The third one will be the easiest one. And you can say that JIS, it's tight to those screws. That's a perfect fit. And I'm just barely turning it. I want that bugle to align this plate because it is drilled and then chamfered. And now let's put a little pressure on it. And then go back and do it again. Okay. Now we have our new block. We've added some thread locker to our bar housing, so we know it's going to be good. We want to double check. And like I said, I have some alcohol on this rag. And It's still damp, so we want to make sure we don't have any blue thread locker coming through those holes. So that'll cause your saddles to stick. Double check everything underneath, make sure you're good. Now's the time to wipe it down. You have access to it. Okay, that looks good. Now, I have been thinking about this and thinking about this as far as these stock saddles. When we took it apart, you notice that some of these are already bent. We have the guitar part, and I know we want to try to keep this guitar, the parts that we're adding to the guitar, not to exceed the price that we paid to the guitar. The guitar was $219 and it was like 30 some dollars to ship. So that gives us a $250 budget. I think that we can be right in that ballpark even with what I'm about to do. We have it apart to this to this point. I think we should just go ahead, add more mass, and do some stainless steel saddles. I think this would be a good upgrade. Again, we're adding mass. Stainless steel is a much harder material. So these adjuster nuts that lock this block for your string, they're much stronger. They're not gonna have the tendency to bend like this steel. So I think we should do this. And if we do go over budget, it's not going to be much. But I did some calculating, and I'm pretty sure that we can stay in the $250 price point, even with adding these. So let's open this up and start putting some saddles in. And I'm being careful cutting along the edge here because I don't want to scratch our new hardware. That's wrapped all the way around that. That's pretty funny. Let's see if this one did the same. Yeah. It's pretty good packaging. Now, I've used this particular company before. It's really nice hardware. The machining is top notch on these. Once I get it all completely out of the package here, I'll show you a close-up. That is almost as bad as when you get a guitar and you have to take it out of that little thin bubble wrap cellophane. Almost. Okay, Allen wrench. Let's take a close look. And you can see the tooling mark. Tooling marks going across there where the machine went back and forth. And that's what I look for. I look at the tooling marks where the machine comes across. What is the step over rate that their machine, each little line, that's a step over. And these are done very well. It's a very nice component. Now, we did take them out of the package, and I made sure that I laid them down in a certain way. So let's see if there's any markings on the bottom of these. And you can see right on the bottom it says Japan 8.80. That's our first one. Japan 8.80. Here's our third one. Japan 9.30. Japan 9.30. Japan 9.80. Japan 9.80. So it looks like we have 2.80s, 2 9.30s, and 2 8.80s. That is very nice that they would to do all that for you. That is really, really, really nice. Let's check our locking nut. I already know that these are superior quality. I've used them before. Nice chamfered corners. The drilling here is nice. It's a good product. Let's check our hole in here and check our machining. And again, really nice product. You want to make sure that when you're doing this that you get that in that spot for that block, that you're tightening it down in the right spot. What I'll do is I'll kind of back it off a little bit, let the block fall, and then push it in. Let the screw do the work for you. I don't know if you can see that. If I back that out, you can see that this falls down just a little bit, and as I push in, it pulls that block and centers it in that bore. That's what you're looking for. All these little things make a big difference on how your system's going to perform. If you take the time, you make sure everything's correct, in the long run, you're going to end up with a much better playing instrument. Okay, here we are. I've organized my bench a little bit. I have laid out our saddles according to their size. 2 larger saddles in the center, then the medium-sized saddles, and then the smallest ones on the end. So let's take a look at our bridge again. If you remember, we discussed they have hit the threads right here, and that just prevents you from backing the saddle out. Right there, it gets tight. So what we have to do now is we have to force these out. You don't want to really crank on them, just move them a little bit. This is brass. Brass is soft. This is steel. So this should give before this. So what ends up happening, you'll feel it like right there. I'm going to start really squeezing. I got pretty strong fingers, and I'm going to roll that. And it does get tight. And you may have to take a tool, put on it, and if you plan on reusing these, don't let it slip, because that will damage the hardware. You can also take a rag, put over it, And that's no guarantee that it's not going to scratch it, because it still may. And then it'll come out. So I'm going to go into squirrel mode and remove the rest of these. Okay. Got our saddles out, or not saddles, got our fine tuners out. Now let's put our new ones in. This one right here, all these feel smooth. This one right here has an issue. So let's push these down. And it's stainless steel, so it's harder than the material. If we have to, we can re-tap that one. It's okay. It is tighter. So what I'm going to do here is just move this back and forth. Most likely where they hit the thread here, it's caused a little issue in there. So we just want to move this harder piece of metal back and forth. It will clean it. Now, a lot of people would tell you to use a tap and die. You really shouldn't. They have what's called a thread chaser, and a thread chaser will clean the threads. A tap and die will cut it. So there is a difference. If you're just trying to clean the threads, use a chaser, not a tap and a die. And that has worked its way out. So we're good now. It's very smooth. So we have to make the determination, do we want to damage the very bottom of these threads to give it a factory? When you come up like this, it's going to stop. I am going to say that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to set the bridge right there. And we're going to get something to just put a spot on the very bottom of the thread. This is stainless steel. So let's just try to put the tool I've got it all of these all the way down. We're going to use the spring as our guide and set this in like this, and we're just going to crimp that very bottom thread. I don't know if you can see that. Now we're going to take it up and check it. And it's still pretty smooth. I want to align it again. The stainless is very, very, very hard. Once we get the first one right, we'll know how much we have to do on the other ones. Give it a little bit of a turn here. And that's dragging right there. So let's do them all like that. A little bit of a turn. Down. And again, I'm using the spring to hold the tool. That way I'm not going too far up on the threads. And a close up. So that'll do us on that. We're just going to move these up. And these are a little longer than the stock ones. See, that feels good right there. That's a nice stop. And they're even, and they're all dragging in the same spot. And we were able to do that because we used the spring to rest the tool on. If you don't get that even, they're all going to stop at different spots. That one's dragging right there. Yeah. That's pretty good. So now let's start working on our saddles. Put my tool away. So we want to double check 8.80, 9.30, 9.80, 9.80, 9.30, and 8.80. So let's go ahead and start putting these guys in. And be mindful of your string block, your little lock. You want to make sure that you get it captured in that little hole, that spot that they've drilled into it. All right. Take our first screw. And I'm not going to really tighten it. I'm just going to set it in place. Double check. 9.30. Yep, so we're pulling from this direction. .80. Make sure that that starts free and clear. Don't cross thread it. .80. That's why I try to start it with my finger first. .30. We're just trying to keep the saddles oriented. See, almost forgot. Get it started with your fingers first. And the tools I'm using are extremely accurate. That tool fits. I mean, it's a snug fit in there. So if you have tools that are a really good fit, you can use the tool to manipulate the end of the screw to get it aligned properly. And there it is. And this is one of the posts that I've removed from the guitar. Remember, we've already done our knife edges, so we know they're good. So I don't know if you can see the tooling marks across that as I move it back and forth. And we can see some damage. So most likely when the guitar was assembled, they put their tool in here. When it had pressure, spun this with the knife gauge, with the knife edge engaged from the tremolo, and damaged at. You can see there's a scratch right there. It's a pretty bad one. So my guess would be that it was assembled and they adjusted the bridge with the knife edge engaged. So I'm going to show you a little trick on how to clean this up. I take a little piece of my sandpaper, my old sandpaper. Got a piece of it up here. You just want to put enough on it to wrap around the screw. That might not be enough. Yep, not quite. Let's try to go this way. Yeah, that'll probably be what we're trying to do, is to protect the threads. Now we want to take our drill and look at your chucks. Make sure that you get this in here nice and square. Let's spin our chucks out. And that part that isn't protected, try to keep that in between the chucks. Get that spun around so you can see. And I'm just doing that by hand. Very little pressure on this. We do not want to damage those threads. And to check it, we want to see if this thing wobbles. And that looks pretty good. Now we're going to take a piece of 1200 sandpaper. We're going to fold it. And as this turns, we want to hold the sandpaper in there and clean like that and like that. Doesn't take much pressure. I'm going to stand up and get in a better position. Very hard to get your position right and also have the camera in the way. Like I said, this is 1200. There's our sandpaper. I'm going to grab another piece. I have some brand new. This says 18, so this is 1800. And let's see what we got. And you can see that it's taking those edges off. Now it's really riding right in this corner. So that's where we want to concentrate. There is a mark right there. And it looks like our bottom. Let's get it out of the drill so we can actually look at it closely. You can still see that scratch is still there. As I spin it, the center edge looks pretty good. I think it does need a little bit more work though. So again, let's put it in and make sure that we keep that spot in between the chuck. Just a little bit of pressure, not much. Spin it. Make sure that it's spinning true. And let's do some more work to it. And you can feel it in the sandpaper. You can feel the little bumps and notches. And you can see there is a spot. Now that we're getting through it, you can see the silver line through the center. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to fold it to a new section. And we're going to repeat that process. Alright, now we're going to hit the center and we're going to work our way back and forth. Looks like a nice little section of sandpaper right there. Let's work on that edge. And I'd say that's pretty good for that one. Let's go to our next one. Let's take our piece of tape off here. There's our good one. And we're going to do our next one. Again, we're going to line our chuck. Just snug. We don't want it tight. We don't want to damage the threads. So let's start working on this one. And you can see right here on this one, you see that stripe. So let's get a clean spot in our sandpaper again. That one cleaned up much better than the first one. Let's take a look at the first one again. Set them side by side. See how much nicer this one looks compared to this one? So let's work on this one again. This one's definitely a keeper. Let's put our tape back on this one. Spin it. Don't like how that's engaging on that one. So let's try again. Much better. Let's fold to a new piece of paper. I think that's as good as that one's going to get. Looks pretty good. Now we just need to reinstall these back into the guitar. And I'm going to throw these away since they're so small. So we have cleaned up our knife edges. We've installed our upgraded parts. and we've cleaned up our posts. So this tremolo should respond really well once installed back into the guitar. There shouldn't be anything in here causing this bridge not to, move freely. No burrs, no drag. That's what we want. We want zero drag, or as very little drag as possible. That way that tremolo can return to its neutral position each time it's used. Okay, before we go over and weigh our new upgraded bridge, I went ahead and pulled the bridge out of the Firefly FFMN number 2, and that is right there. And if we turn this over, it also has the FR stamping. And here's the block from the bridge we modified. So let's look at the front view. Side view. Back. And our other side. These are all the components that we have replaced from the stock to our modified. So let's go over and put it on the scale and see what we got. Okay, here we are at our scale. We are on grams. So let's take our stock bridge. Let's see what it weighs. And that is grams. 11.7 ounces. Okay, 332 grams. Now let's take our upgraded bridge. Grams. Ounces. That is a large difference in mass. This bridge now should sustain really well. Okay, we're back at the workbench. If you like this type content, please put down in the comments, hey, I like what you're doing. If you have something that you want to ask that was not covered in this video modifying a Floyd Rose style bridge, leave a comment. I do read them and I will answer it. If you would, please hit the subscribe button and the little bell, and tell me what you think. I believe we did a heck of a job taking a stock bridge and really taking it to the next level, to a pro grade bridge. Anyway, we're going to end it here, and in the next video we will move on with this project a little bit further. Thank you very much for watching.